Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome on in. It's 1TS Daily right here on the One True Sport YouTube channel. How's it going? I'm your host, Zack Heydorn. Hopefully everybody's doing great out there. I'm pumped to be here. Day 3 of this here endeavor. And man, it's been an absolute blast. Thank you to everybody who has tuned in throughout the last couple days. And appreciate you being here today. We have a big show planned. It's going to be a fun one. Lots to discuss. It's good to see you guys filing in. Thanks so much to those who are listening on YouTube. Thanks to those who are listening on Twitter. Appreciate you being here. And like I said, we've got a lot to discuss. I'm your host. I'm Zack Heydorn, founder of Brass Ring Media. You can check out my work on a day-to-day basis in longer form if you want. Over at Brass Ring Media. You search Brass Ring Media on YouTube, and you can find my written work on Brass Ring Media Substack newsletter as well. I'm also the author of Stunning, The Wrestling Artistry of Steve Austin. My first book came out a couple weeks ago, and you can get that on Amazon right now. This show is about the news. What's happening right now in the professional wrestling business? What's happening right now on all the biggest shows across the pro wrestling ecosystem? We cover it all. And today we're going to be kind of delving into a couple different topics that we haven't gotten to too much, and that's NXT and that's AEW. A little odds and ends stuff the first couple days, but much more planned for those two promotions this week and today in particular. Want to let you guys know, if you haven't done so already, head to onetruesport.com now to check out how you can become a member of One True Sport. We've got a ton of membership tiers with lots of great perks, lots of great content, lots of great stuff that you can sink your teeth into as a member of this brand new platform. So head over there now, onetruesport.com, and figure out which membership tier is best for you. We've got all sorts of different options. So head over there, make sure you pick that out. The live chat is open. We see Amy in there. What's going on, Amy? Good to hear from you. Thanks for joining us live. Others are filing in there as well. If you're willing and able, our super chats are open as well. And that is an opportunity for you to get in on the discussion, make a comment, ask a question. We'll read it live here on the air, and then discuss it in great detail. All super chat contributions really help out the organization and the platform continue to grow. So I thank you guys in advance for anything that you can do in that regard. Appreciate it. But hello to those who are joining us live right now. I'm going to flash Amy's up there just because. Just want to say hi, Amy, once again. All right. With all that stuff out of the way, let's get into the news. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of the show. And we'll start with last night's episode of NXT. Ethan Page signs a contract to wrestle Trick Williams for the NXT Championship at NXT Battleground on Sunday. Here's the thing. I don't know that exactly means that he's signed to NXT. Reports from last week indicate that he's not like officially a member of the NXT roster, but kind of a free agent, if you will. They certainly played up the free agent part of him being involved with NXT yesterday when he arrived in grand fashion on the show and kind of flexed his muscles for Ava and was obnoxious during the contract signing. But really, it doesn't matter. The storyline here is Ethan Page is free agent. He attacked Trick Williams and members of Meta-4, and now Trick Williams is going to fight him for the NXT Championship. The big angle last night was all about Trick really wanting to get Page in the ring for what he's done to him. And so he's got him now. The contract is signed and they're ready to go. That's the story. Is this good or bad for NXT? Like, I'm really curious as to what you guys think of that. So in the comments, I want to just you guys to run down. You think this is good or bad, Ethan Page to NXT? I think Ethan Page is kind of a underrated talent that was a bit of fish out of water in AEW. He, to me, is a guy that always just brought to the table character, personality, and charisma over, in-ring work, in-ring chops, right? Like that just wasn't his strength. It's not that he had bad matches. I don't want to, say that, because that wouldn't be accurate. He's not a guy that can't work. He's just a guy that I think fits better in like what WWE is looking for in their superstar. I think he fits better in an NXT. I think he fits better on Raw or on SmackDown at some point in his career, just because I think his skill set is tailor-made for that particular product and less so AEW. So this is a good move for Ethan Page, to go from AEW and really not being used all that effectively. He tried to kind of reignite his career as part of Ring of Honor, and that fell apart because it's Ring of Honor. There's not a lot of attention on it. There's not a lot of eyes on it, period. So it's hard to reignite anything in that environment. So going from that to NXT, and not just NXT, but in the world title picture, in a world title match on a PLE on Peacock, like that's a pretty big jump. And so, you're going to take that all day if you're Ethan Page. Amy here in our chat saying, good, I'm glad, I'm happy to see him in NXT. Yeah, I mean, he fits well, Amy. He really does. So it's definitely a good move for him. I think it's a good move for NXT too. I think it shines a light on some issues that NXT has right now, though. And that is, do they have enough challengers for Trick Williams? I mean, when you take away Carmelo Hayes, you take away Braun Breaker, you take away Ilya Dragunov, the men's division gets real thin real quick. Not Dijak, you take away Dijak as well. And you're left over with like a potential Noam Dar versus Trick Williams NXT Championship program. That doesn't really put butts in seats, right? I mean, like that's not a marquee match. And yes, they've got some upper covers. Like, of course, Obafemi has been very impressive. Andre Chase, has had his moments. Duke Hudson has had his moments. They're doing this thing with Rich Holland. So there's guys there, but nobody that you think is going to like take a top spot at like a Stand and Deliver WrestleMania weekend show opposite Trick Williams. They need to get down to business and start creating some talent and creating some top stars. So in the meantime, Ethan Page, I think, can fill that void nicely. He can talk. People know him. He kind of has like a bit of a special feel to him being on NXT after appearing not so long ago, for AEW. So I think it works for right now. But again, it's also been his appearance has been like the light switch that turns on and going, hey, we have to bring this outside guy in, and we're going to immediately shoot him to the top of the card in a title match because we don't really have anybody else. So what do we do? It's something to think about. It's something to think about for Shawn Michaels. It's something to think about for Triple H when they move, talent around. Trick Williams as champion, I think, has suffered a little bit because of a lack of a really strong opponent coming out of the big win at Stand and Deliver. I was at that show. Covering that show for Brass Ring Media. And it was a really fun show. That audience was behind Trick. They were all in on him for sure. And I think for the most part, the audience is still with him, but he's definitely like cooled off a bit. And I think that's because he hasn't had a strong opponent to play off of. And, Ethan Page, like this all has come together so quick that they don't have like a big, deep personal grudge. Excuse me while I take a sip of coffee. It is early in the morning still, folks. So Trick as champion, I think, can benefit from this. Like I said, there's some extra eyes. It's not Trick trying to elevate somebody like Noam Dar to a world title situation. And so he gets to kind of play with a bigger act. And I think that's good for him. But they've got some depth issues. And I think that's like the most glaring thing about Ethan Page's appearance in NXT, and frankly, the slowing of momentum for Trick Williams, and it's tough because is it reasonable to think that Trick Williams can maintain the momentum he had when he's going up against Carmelo Hayes, a guy that he has 3 years worth of context around why they're feuding, right? I mean, no, I don't think that's reasonable. Same thing with Cody on SmackDown. Like, how can you compare what he's doing right now as champion to the run that he was on leading up to becoming champion? Like, you can't. It's not going to be the same. But you want to try to level off the drop off as much as you can. And in both instances, I think both guys are kind of in a similar spot. They're kind of just trying to find their spot as champion without this longer story to play off of. That's where we're at with Trick Williams right now. Ethan Page is going to be a part of that process for him, and it's going to go down Sunday on Peacock. We'll have more NXT Battleground stuff later this week on this show. We'll probably do a full preview of the show as part of our Friday episode, heading into the weekend. That's kind of what I have penciled in right now. So full NXT Battleground preview later this week, a couple days, right here on 1TS Daily. Let's move on to the second story, AEW Dynamite tonight. Let's preview quickly. We've got Swerve Strickland versus Roderick Strong for the AEW World Championship. We've got Mariah May versus Saraya in a match that was supposed to take place last week. That's now going to take place this week. Thanks to Mercedes Moné. As we talked about earlier in the week, you can check out our past episodes to see what went down with Mercedes Moné and why did Mariah May versus Saraya get bumped from last week's show. Check out the last couple episodes for updates on that. We also have the Blackpool Combat Club, all 4 members together, wrestling Magnus, Volador Jr., Rugido, and I believe it's Esfinge. I don't have the right pronunciation necessarily in front of me, but I believe that's what it is. And last but not least, the other major thing they're promoting for the show is the return of MJF. He will be returning to AEW Dynamite for the first time in months, and for the first time since returning to the company at AEW Double or Nothing a couple weeks back. Let's start with the MJF return. If you followed any of my content or read any of my stuff for Brass Ring Media coming out of Double or Nothing, you know that I was very, very high on the promo that MJF cut on that show. I think it was like from an efficiency standpoint and from the standpoint of, hey, MJF is out there doing business. I think that promo at Double or Nothing was was the best promo MJF has cut in AEW. It was perfect. It addressed his absence. It addressed like the very lukewarm end to his run in AEW before he left due to injury. It addressed Adam Cole briefly, but not so much as to put him directly in a feud with Adam Cole because Cole's not around and Undisputed Kingdom is, floundering at best and completely useless at worst. So, you don't need to spend too much time on that if you're MJF because you're not going to do anything there. You shouldn't be doing anything there. So they gave enough time to him and Cole. MJF also got to kind of reinvent himself a little bit. He looked different. He had different wardrobe, and he was back to being the fiery MJF that we all know, and that we all love. And that he called out the fact that he lost that at the end of his AEW run earlier this year. And I think that was the biggest part. He said what everybody else saw out in the open and use that as a means to drive his new personality forward, to drive the new character forward, and to drive his presence in AEW forward. And man, I just thought that was just chef's kiss from what you would expect for that return. I love this. Matt is jumping in the chat here going, whoop that trick. I love that guy. I'm a fan. Yeah, Matthew, I think you are not the only one, my friend. And we'll see if Trick Williams gets the main event of the show, working with Ethan Page, or if it's going to be Roxanne Perez versus Jordan Grace. But either way, Trick's getting some prominent time, and that's good finally. Thanks for the comment, Matthew. As I mentioned, guys, live chat is open. If you want to drop a comment there, our super chats are open as well. If you're able to drop a super chat, make a contribution to the show, we'll make sure your question gets read and answered, and we spend some time discussing it as well. So those are open if you're able. Thank you in advance. So let's stay on MJF. What do you guys think? If you're watching live here and you're in the chat, do you prefer a babyface MJF return or a heel MJF return? Like, what's ideal for you as a fan watching? Curious, because I think there's arguments both ways. And seeing what happened at Double or Nothing, it clearly he's in line to return, at least for the time being, as a babyface. Like, there was aggression in that promo, and there was intensity in that promo, and there was kind of like a sense of like almost cockiness and arrogance, but I would say more along the lines of just being confident. And when you have that, that's babyface. Like, that is presenting as a babyface. He was engaging with the crowd, not at them. He had all the elements of a babyface promo there. And I think that in the mission statement too, the mission statement that he's back and he's going to, shed whatever happened at the end of his run last time, and he's going to go after the title. Like, boom, again, babyface move. So for the time being, I think he's going to be returning as a babyface. And as I said, or as I was about to say, that's the right call. I mean, people want to cheer MJF right now. And really, he didn't get to be this babyface when he was champion. He was the silly comedy, I'm going to go fishing with my buddy type babyface champion. And that didn't land. I mean, it really didn't. I'm in for seeing this babyface version of MJF, like the intense version of MJF, like the MJF that we know, but just tweaked a little bit and pointed at heels. That I always thought was the better formula for MJF as a babyface, not this drastic pivot to this comedy guy who does kangaroo kicks, which he thankfully said was going to go away. Goodness, that's good. Good to hear, MJF. So I'm in for this right now if it stays this course. But long term, I still think that MJF has a higher ceiling as a heel, especially with the landscape of AEW the way it is right now. You've got Swerve Strickland, who has, forced himself into the position of top guy and top babyface because of how popular he's gotten, how good he's gotten. You've got Will Ospreay, also premier level babyface, new signee that the AEW fan base is excited to have in the company. So, like, the question is, if you're MJF, where do you fit in that world? And really, if I'm MJF, it's like, man, I don't know that I want to beat those guys out. I want to wrestle them. I mean, like, Swerve Strickland babyface versus MJF heel for the title, that's a big match. That's a big match. That's a pay-per-view match. Same thing, Will Ospreay versus MJF for the world title. That's a big match. So those are like two key matches, and I think MJF is certainly your biggest star in AEW, but if you keep MJF babyface, then you kind of got to tiptoe around the fact that there's two other top babyfaces that he has to work with. And so if you're Tony Khan, maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you don't want to mess with that. I certainly wouldn't want to mess with that. And at the same token, if he's a heel, there's guys for him to work with too. I mean, like Okada versus MJF. I mean, how cool would that be? Or if he stays babyface, and MJF kind of picks up the baton and tries to fight the Elite, as they throw their weight around. I mean, MJF would be a perfect guy for that, as long as he maintains his intensity and he doesn't lose like the personality that made him as popular as he did. And he lost it. He lost it during the end of his previous run as world champion. He has it back now. The promo did that. And so tonight, I think they need to let him talk, let him show that personality. And I think they need to set up his next opponent. They need to have some direction for him right out of the gates, whether that is Okada or whether that's somebody else. I think you want to start to plant the seeds of what MJF is going to do this summer and get people excited about that. So that's what I'm expecting out of him. As far as Swerve Strickland versus Roderick Strong, I mean, yeah, we know what's going to happen there, right? I mean, Swerve's going to win. Not even sure why the world title's on the line. Like, come on, Tony Khan. Let's get a little bit better here with who gets title shots and why. Maybe with Mariah May and Saraya. Like, Saraya is a role player now. So Mariah May is going to win this. And I think she's done a really nice job of getting over organically. Like, she came in with not a ton of fanfare. She didn't get the Mercedes Moné treatment or the Saraya treatment for that matter. Even Deonna Purrazzo treatment. Like, she just was kind of there one day, and then she was signed, and they announced that she signed, and she's been carving out a spot for herself ever since. And I think because of that, and because she works so much, the audience has an investment in her and seeing her do well. And I think it's manifested good for her. And I think she's gonna, like, this time next year, I would guess, when we do this show, on June 5th, 2025, my guess is Mariah May is a big time player for AEW and the women's division. So she's gonna win. Don't worry about that. Amy says here, that's not the only thing we need TK to get better at. Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's some things there that he needs to work on for sure. But Amy, to me, you're right. Can't beat around the bush. There's a lot of things he needs to get better at. I think making sure your top guys are defined properly and in a way that makes sense and in a way that's lined up with how the crowd is reacting to them can help with a lot of other problems that he has. And so the goal tonight, I think, is to define MJF one way or the other. Should people be cheering him? Should people be booing him? We want to be able to answer that question by the end of the show. Thanks, Amy. Appreciate you. Moving on, we'll stay in AEW and some different kind of news. Kevin Kelly claims that AEW didn't care much about his mental health when he was with the company. He said during a virtual signing this week, quote, "My mental health was not good from when this began, and it was taking a toll on my marriage, on my family, on me personally, physically, and mentally. AEW's stance was, we really don't understand and we don't care. So whatever, they'll get theirs. I set up a psychiatrist appointment on Thursday because we were taping TV the next day, and then they fired me on Wednesday. So you guys really care about the people you employ." So that's Kevin Kelly talking about the final days he had in AEW. I don't know. My antenna goes up a little bit on this, folks. Obviously, I don't know. And AEW, at the point of that we are recording this show, has not responded to those remarks. I don't expect that they will. From everything we know about AEW and from Tony Khan, this doesn't really track. I mean, other things track out with him and other claims made about him and his leadership and his company. But for the most part, though, I think that like mental health has been something that, that Tony Khan has given people time for, and I think when people have needed breaks, they've given breaks. Britt Baker right now is out and she hasn't been around for a while. I don't think that's an injury thing. So who knows what that is? But I think like Tony Khan generally has been pretty open about making sure that his talent is taken care of. And so I don't know. I hope this is not the case. I hope that they just weren't just totally dismissive of Kevin Kelly's issues. And I hope that doesn't prove out to be true. If it does, we'll certainly analyze and we'll certainly discuss. But until then, I don't know. It seems a little bit like, former employee just talking bad about the company because they can. I don't think Kevin Kelly was really a good fit for AEW, as it turns out. And I'm surprised to say that because I thought that he would be a good fit. I mean, Kevin Kelly, when you look back at what he did in his work in New Japan, I mean, that guy was a storyteller, man. I mean, he's not a guy that calls the moves as well as somebody like Excalibur does. But when you need to like tell the story about characters and give context and give like a foundation for the reason that matches are happening, I mean, Kevin Kelly was one of the best at that. And in New Japan, where like that type of storytelling isn't like a focal point of the work. So when he comes over to AEW, I'm thinking, wow, okay, perfect. Like he's a guy they need to help articulate what stories are happening here. And it just never clicked. It was the weirdest thing. Like, I don't know, that he wasn't getting enough material to sink his teeth into, where, there just wasn't enough story to try to tell. I think you could probably make that argument if you watch Collision. It is very much a collection of matches, more so than it is like a pro wrestling show. And that's good or bad. That's for better or worse, right? But, I also think a little of the responsibility falls on Kevin Kelly. I mean, there were times where he didn't know the guys' names. He didn't know the key moves. And it was almost like he was just, drinking from a fire hose, trying to collect all the AEW information. And he seemed like that he wasn't like a master of the product at times. And, that to me was an issue, is an issue if you're going to be a lead commentator on a nationally televised show, right? I mean, you got to be buttoned up. I mean, that's just facts. I mean, same thing in WWE. When they had some of these guys like Adnan Virk and who's the guy? Who's the Bellator guy? I forget his name, but those guys at times didn't know the product and they looked silly because of it. And I think Kevin Kelly kind of had more responsibility for knowing that, because people, like, he's not new to the space. He's not new to the industry. He should know how to broadcast a show and know the guys that he's talking about. He just didn't. So we'll see. We'll keep looking at the story. We'll see how AEW responds if they do. I'm not expecting them to, but some pretty tough words from Kevin Kelly there. All right. Let's move on here. We'll wrap up with the 1TS Daily Nuggets for 6/5/2024. First and foremost, Randy Orton, in an interview with Sportskeeda, says he doesn't think anybody's beaten his world title record, and says, as far as someone becoming the youngest world heavyweight champion and taking that from me, I don't see it happening. Only because I think it was a very special circumstance when I became the youngest world champion. I was 24 years old, and I don't know if there's anyone young enough to make it to that yet. I don't think so either. I mean, 24 is young. And I think in various Randy Orton documentaries, they talk about how he wasn't really ready for that title, even at 24. He admits that. And so, like when you look around at who has world titles in WWE right now, even if they did hotshot it to a young up-and-coming talent, like let's say like Braun Breaker. I think Braun Breaker is like 26, I think. So that's still 2 years older than Randy Orton. And he's like the youngest guy that I can think of on the roster that is worthy of holding the world title right now. So have to agree with Randy Orton on this. Randy, I think you're going to lock down that spot for quite some time. In AEW news, Christian Cage credits a conversation with Jon Moxley for an introduction into AEW and joining AEW. Christian talked with Chris Van Vliet about coming into AEW and said that it was Moxley that was really surprised that Christian wasn't locked down to a contract. He connected Tony Khan and Christian Cage. Cage says they talked for 3 hours, and he says halfway through the conversation he knew that AEW was for him. I believe it. I believe it. And really, like, Christian Cage has been one of the, turns out, and I didn't think this at the time, I don't think many people did, based on the kind of the backlash that AEW got for hyping up Christian Cage's debut the way that they did. But Christian Cage has been one of the better free agents that they've brought in. And not, that's, again, I'm not saying that Will Ospreay's been bad or that Jon Moxley's been bad. No, like, they're all very strong. But Cage, you just didn't know what you're going to get out of him. to me, what did he have left in the tank? Was he willing and able to reinvent himself? Is he willing and able to do business? You didn't know. And he really has taken time to create a character for himself that works at 50 plus, his age. And he's forced himself in a position to be in big matches, and he's held titles, and he's been in pay-per-view main events. Like, that's good on him. And I think that's a big win. So, credit Jon Moxley, yes, but also credit Christian Cage. And finally, Adam Copeland took to social media yesterday and revealed that he has undergone successful surgery for a broken tibia that he suffered in his match against Malachi Black at Double or Nothing. It's going to be a bit before we see Adam Copeland, but he says that he's on the road to return. And tough break, no pun intended, seriously, for Copeland. But hopefully he can come back. Hopefully he can come back and still have some impactful matches. It's crazy, all the matches that he hasn't had yet in AEW since he's been there, right? I mean, he still has to work Will Ospreay. He still has to work Swerve. He still has to work MJF. He still has to work Okada. Like, there's big stuff for him to do in AEW if he can make it back. And so hopefully he does. I think that'll move the needle. That stuff will move the needle for AEW as a company. Boom. There we go. Thanks so much for joining me. We'll wrap up on that note. This has been 1TS Daily for Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. Once again, I'm Zack Heydorn. You can catch more of my work at Brass Ring Media. It's the platform that I run. We have a YouTube channel that I'd love for you all to go subscribe to. We have daily shows there that are live and ones that are just longer form in analyzing the product. Check us out. I think you'll be happy that you did. It's free to subscribe on YouTube. It's free to subscribe on Substack. We do a lot of writing, written work, features, editorials, interviews. You can check all that out on Substack. Just find us, Brass Ring Media Substack, and you can find us there. Cool. As far as One True Sport goes, guys, head to onetruesport.com. It's been a huge week for us. We're so happy that you're here joining us for this journey and trusting us to cover professional wrestling the way that we do. OneTrueSport.com. That is where our membership tiers are. You can find out what membership tier works best for you and all the perks that come along with it. And you can sign up right now. You can also sign up right where you're watching. There's a little join button. You can click that and the membership options will pull up as well. So do that. Jump on that. Get in here at the ground floor. You'll be very, very happy that you did. Cool. You can follow me on Twitter X. It's Zack_Heydorn. Until then, we'll catch you tomorrow. Same time, same place, right here. One True Sport and 1TS Daily. See ya.